The Chargers finally made their hiring decision for their defensive coordinator. Who did they hire? It was a candidate that they hadn't really brought in. And honestly, in a lot of my research, it wasn't someone that immediately jumped out to me. But the minute that I got to really read into the backstory of Chris O'Leary, the more I realized what a good hire this was for the LA Chargers and how significant of a deal it was to bring in O'Leary and kind of continue some of the success that Jesse Minter had. Obviously, we're going to talk about the offensive line hiring as well. But before we do that, I need you to let me know, who is your favorite Chargers player of all time? It could be a player that played with the team while they were in LA. It could be someone that played with the team while they were in San Diego. Let me know who your favorite Chargers player was down below in the comment section. I think if you had to ask me, I'm going to go very vanilla, and it's LT, LaDainian Tomlinson. Always loved watching him when I was growing up. Now, let's get into the video. This is Chargers Now. I am your host, Will Ortner, and there was a multitude of different hires yesterday for the Chargers. Obviously, they ended up bringing in Chris O'Leary to be the defensive coordinator in LA, and Butch Barry, he's going to end up being the offensive line coach. Two really good hires that I'm going to dive into today, starting, of course, with O'Leary. When you look at this hiring here as a defensive coordinator, I think a lot of things came true for Chargers fans that we didn't always necessarily see, or we were worried that might not end up actually happening, right? There were a lot of Chargers fans who saw the success that Jesse Minter had. Obviously, a lot of Chargers fans wanted someone that was a Minter disciple. I think you also saw some people that were Charger fans that said, hey, I want someone who has been a defensive coordinator before and who can win. Of course, O'Leary kind of fits into that mold as well. And then lastly, you have to get someone that the players are going to respect. O'Leary hits that. What do I mean by that? Let's dive into those 3 points deeper. He is a Jesse Minter disciple. That is, of course, talking about O'Leary. Obviously, Jesse Minter, the last 2 years that he was a defensive coordinator in LA, they were very, very successful, right? When you look at the defense from top to bottom, Minter's defenses were always some of the top performing defenses. Well, O'Leary was a safeties coach for the Chargers in 2024 and actually helped push that defense and some of the key contributors on it into some of their best years as professional football players. And Minter clearly looked at O'Leary as someone that he valued and someone that he trusted. When you look at a star player on that defensive team in 2024, O'Leary was the coach for that player. Who am I talking about? I'm, of course, talking about Derwin James, the all-pro safety and multiple-time Pro Bowl safety for the Chargers. Derwin James had a fantastic campaign, one of the best, if not the best, seasons in his career, and that, of course, was with O'Leary at the head. O'Leary making sure that he was in the right positions that he needed to be, playing at the utmost level, and, of course, taking advantage of what opposing offenses were going to do against him. Clearly, to me, if Derwin James is performing at a high level, one, that is a little bit of coaching. Well, it's a lot of bit of coaching. It's a little bit of Derwin James, a lot of bit of Derwin James. But most importantly, it's a cohesive unit together, meaning Derwin James knows what the coach expects out of him, and the coach demands and gets a high level of buy-in out of his player. O'Leary got the most out of Derwin James that year in 2024, and so that shows me that clearly O'Leary is a good coach, at least in a positional basis. But that's the thing. If you're going to be a defensive coordinator, you can't just be good at the position group that you focus on. You also have to be good at calling plays and getting the most out of every position group on that defense. Well, let's look at the year that O'Leary had when he was the defensive coordinator over at Western Michigan. Now, I know some people are going to come in and kind of poo-poo, hey, you can't say a guy was a good defensive coordinator at a MAC school and then say he's going to be a great defensive coordinator at an NFL level for an NFL team. But I'll tell you what, right now, I was very, very impressed with everything that was going on for O'Leary when you take a look at what was happening in Western Michigan in the MAC. A 10-4 record with him as the defensive coordinator, that's not something that's easy to do, especially at a spot like Western Michigan. Scoring defense, one of the highest in the FBS. Now, again, when you look at the types of teams that a Western Michigan is playing, it's not going to be a Michigan or an Ohio State, a USC, a UCLA, right? Those aren't teams that you're typically going to play. But when you look at the type of team that's going to have a similar talent as Western Michigan, they clearly did a very good job against them. When you look at the amount of yards allowed per game, one of the top teams in the country. So clearly, this Western Michigan team, they know how to play football and they know how to stop their opponents from scoring. That's because their defensive coordinator, Chris O'Leary, was absolutely dominating. He was putting the players in the right spot, he was calling the right plays at the right moments, and he knew just what buttons to press to get the most out of his players. It's also clear throughout this process, after the announcement of O'Leary being the new head coach, or being the new defensive coordinator, in LA, it's clear that the players love him. When you just look at the list of players who have come out and said, we love the hiring of O'Leary to be the new defensive coordinator in LA, it is some of the stars and key contributors to this team. Tony Jefferson has been a very vocal proponent of O'Leary. Elijah Molden, clearly one of his better years was when O'Leary was his coach. Really loves what he's doing. Daiyan Henley. Henley's been outspoken, ecstatic that he's going to have O'Leary come in and be his new DC. Those are some of the big contributors and stars on that defense, and we haven't even heard yet what Derwin James has to say about O'Leary, but I'm going to tell you it's probably going to be pretty darn positive. Clearly, the players love and respect their new defensive coordinator, and that's the way you get the most out of your players. When Jesse Minter spoke, the players listened. One, because they respect him, but two, because they trust that he knew what he was talking about and putting those players in the best positions to succeed. So if Jesse Minter is going to give that stamp of approval to a guy like Chris O'Leary, you know that the Chargers are going to be in good hands when it comes to their defense. Are you excited about the Chargers' new defensive coordinator? Let me know down below in the comment section, yes or no. I'll tell you right now, I'm pretty darn fired up, and I think a lot of the other players are as well. Let me know if you're fired up with them too in the comment section. Butch Barry is the other big hire that we need to talk about because he's going to be manning the offensive line. In my opinion, the worst unit on the Chargers team last season. Now, some of it is because of injuries. Let's just be honest. When you lose Slater, you lose Alt, you're going to have a little bit of a struggle. But hiring a guy like Butch Barry is going to allow the Chargers to get the most out of that offensive line unit. And they need to fix it because despite being a playoff team, the Chargers O-line was absolutely dreadful. Why is Barry a great hire? Well, it's because Mike McDaniel clearly trusts Butch Barry. What do I mean by that? I mean that these two have been working hand in hand for quite some time right now. And McDaniel is someone who's going to come in with an offensive game plan already set up in mind. McDaniel clearly wants to run the football. He wants to use those long, wide zone schemes. And Barry knows what McDaniel is going to ask of his offensive linemen. So, McDaniel, Barry, they kind of almost speak their own language. We've all had this where you have someone that you work with and you can just kind of grunt at them and they know exactly what you're looking for and how to do it. And the same can be said if they grunt at you and you know what they're looking for and what they need out of that conversation. That's McDaniel. That's Barry. And Barry's had a lot of success. Barry and McDaniel have been together basically 5 out of the last 6 seasons. When you look at the O-line performance under Barry, it's been ecstatic. Now, I think some people have gone and cherry-picked what I would call a very bad stat with last year's Dolphins offensive line, and they're just looking strictly at a PFF grade. Because when you look at the Chargers PFF ranking and grade on the offensive line, it's only one spot worse than the Dolphins. So they must basically be the same, right? Wrong. When you look at the rushing yards per attempt, clearly the Dolphins are one of the best in the National Football League, which is something that's going to only help Justin Herbert as he continues to push forward. The pressure rate, no one got to Tua because if anyone got to Tua, well, Tua couldn't do his job properly. No one was able to really get through if they weren't bringing extra pressure or adding in extra blitzes. And so you can just see right here by this graphic how much better the Dolphins' offensive line was than the Chargers, despite whatever reason having a weird PFF rating that was pretty darn close. Clearly, you are getting an upgrade at that offensive line coach position. So not only are you going to be able to expect that your 2 tackles take a step forward when they come back from their injuries, but I also think that whoever is playing center or the other 2 guard spots for you, they're going to be able to take a step forward as well. Players clearly love Barry here. They've done a fantastic job of voicing how much success they've had under Barry. Barry has done a great job as well of getting the most out of his players. Look, offensive line isn't a nice spot. Sometimes you're going to have a coach that can be a little bit more of a hard ass, can be a little bit more of a red ass. And Barry can clearly fall into that mold. But at the end of the day, as long as the players trust and respect you and come out and say nice things, which you have seen a multitude of O-linemen say about Barry from his time over in Miami, it is clear. The O-line, while they know it's going to be rough, while they know it's going to be gritty, they know that Barry's going to take care of them and that he cares about them and that at the end of the day, he is going to work to make sure that they can succeed as much as possible. So to me, this is only a great sign because it's offensive coordinator, O-line coach. They are synced up, ready to go. The players, they are going to want to battle for their guy who's their coach. And most importantly, the stats back up that O-line in Miami being much better than the Chargers offensive line. And to me, it's not just because it's a talent gap. It's more so because it's a coaching gap. I believe that the Chargers are going to win the AFC West in 2026. They've kind of assembled the perfect coaching staff. I cannot wait to see what this team does on offense, defense, and special teams next year. I think they can win the AFC West. Let me know down below in the comment section, do you agree with me or do you disagree? I better hear a lot of Chargers fans sounding off in the agreement category. Make sure that you hit that sub button. Thank you guys so much for viewing the show today. We are trying to become the biggest channel covering the Chargers here at Chat Sports and on YouTube. The only way to be able to do that is for more and more of you to come in and hit that sub button. Thank you guys so much for viewing today's video, and bolt up.